Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Crease with the Triple Threat Show. We are your hosts, Jeremy Lapidus, and as always, my friend and co-host, Shane Brislin, the hockey expert, the man who you should never argue with the ice. And it's the perfect weather for it, Shane. You want to know why? Because it's cold outside. Who let it get cold? I'm not a big fan of it being cold, but the cold weather means it's hockey season, and hockey season is a month in. There's been lots of big surprises. We have crazy teams at the top. The Ducks at the top of the Pacific? Who could have guessed that? Definitely not us. We had them both missing the playoffs. Lots of big news from around the NHL. Of course, the NHL 2025 class, Hall of Fame class, got inducted earlier this week. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about more surprise team, who is in the lead for the Calder Trophy, and much more. But Shane, I want to start off with the Ducks. I've kind of buried the lead a little bit. The Ducks are the best team in the NHL. That's the title of this video. They are the best team in the NHL if you go by standings. I guess second best team in the NHL behind the Colorado Avalanche, who are insane right now. The offensive production coming from them is ridiculous. 68 goals in 17 games is insane. That is not a normal number of goals. But the Ducks not too far behind, 64, 23 points, leading the Pacific Division, ahead of the Kings, the Oilers, the Vegas Golden Knights, who have come out of the gate slow, and many more teams. Why is this Ducks team so good, and why are they going to win the Stanley Cup?
Ooh, you're throwing a lot at me right off the bat. So forgive me if you're distracted by the flashing lights in the background. Of course, I have the Chicago Blackhawks New Jersey Devils game going on as a true hockey fan
Of course,
would on
as
their
you
day
should.
off. But the Ducks have been a fun team to watch. They are a dichotomy when it comes to age. They have the super old veterans and the super young, barely legal to drink forwards. So they had a lot of moves this offseason, adding veteran talent in Jacob Trouba and Chris Kreider. And a lot of that was heavily criticized because they're coming off down seasons. The New York Rangers were a soap opera. Nothing seemed to be going right for them. And I think they may have bought them low because now we're seeing the Chris Kreider we're used to seeing, who's on the power play, scoring a bunch of goals. We're seeing vintage Jacob Trouba, possibly Winnipeg Jets Jacob Trouba, who could do it all, hit, block shots, add points here and there, playing top line minutes. I think the change of scenery and the California weather is doing them wonders, and they are a great complement and mentors for all the young talent. Leo Carlson was a second overall pick. They have cannot pronounce his name, Cutter Gauthier, who was a top 10 pick, trade with the Flyers because he didn't want to sign in Philadelphia. They have third overall pick, Beckett Seneke and Mason McTavish. And on the back end, you have Lacombe and Zellweger. Like all of these young guys just having a really good run right now. And of course, you can't have a good team without having good goaltending. And they let go of John Gibson, who was the backbone of that goaltending core for a long time. And now they sent him off, and it's Lucas Dostal's crease, and he's played really well in his absence. However, do I have faith in this Ducks team? I'll let you say your point before I get there.
Ooh, it sounds like you don't have faith in this Ducks team. I was going to say, Dostal had been really good at the end of last season as well. He had kind of taken over that job at the end of, really halfway through last year anyway. So this was not a move that was super risky for them. But this is a Ducks team that, like you said, is getting production from everywhere. You have the young guys stepping up. You have the old guys stepping up especially, which is kind of why people were talking about them as a dark horse team to make the playoffs in the offseason. A team that was just barely on the outside looking in when you were looking at betting favorites to sneak into a wild card spot. Sustainability is the question, and you were about to go into that because this is a team that feels like it's playing way above its head. Dostal has kind of started to come down to earth a little bit. A 269 goals against average for him, a 908 save percentage. It's just kind of average, which is fine with the offensive production they're getting from all of their guys. Jacob Trouba leads the league in plus minus, which kind of a fake stat, but it doesn't really matter. You have two Ducks in the top five for goals on the season in Leo Carlsson and Cutter Gaither, right? Leo Carlsson also top two, only trailing Nathan McKinnon in points on the season overall. So there's a lot of offense coming from these guys. That seems like the make or break point. The goaltending isn't keeping them alive. It's not like Dostal's standing on his head. He's playing a really good hockey, but it's not like he's less than a 2 goals allowed average like Logan Thompson is right now for the Capitals, right? He's just been okay in net, maybe better than okay, above average, but the offense is the thing that's really propelled them. Second in the league in goals overall, only trailing the Avalanche. How sustainable is that?
Yeah, so a theme with all of these hot teams right now is that they have really high shooting percentages and they are getting decent goaltending while letting up a lot of shots. And it's still early and a bunch of random stuff is happening. You see these players on hot streaks you wouldn't expect, but the real teams show up later in the season. And that's where that veteran experience comes in handy, where the prime players who've done it for a few years know how to condition themselves, know how to pace themselves into the real guts and grind of the latter part of the season. Now, with this youth movement, yeah, they'll have the energy, they'll have the speed, but do they have the mental and physical endurance to deal with the season in January, February? Because you always see the Leafs and the Oilers, these perennial Stanley Cup contenders, have awful starts to the season. And then January comes around, and then it's win after win after win, and Austin Matthews is putting up goal after goal after goal. So they're going to have to compete with those types of teams in the latter half. And while it's good they have these really old vets and these really young players, they don't have a lot of middle guys like your Troy Terrys who are in their prime. And they'll have to lean on those vets for the experience and how to keep that momentum going forward. So I'm a little bit worried as the season goes on if these young guys can stay disciplined enough and not get too in over their heads with how much of a lead they have. And I'm worried about Trouba and Kreider sustaining their pace because they're not young.
No.
And I'm waiting for the fall off in their age. It's not like they're decrepit or anything. It's just after seeing what happened to the New York Rangers last year and how bad they were, they're not going to get any better.
Right.
So
and like you mentioned the veterans, these guys have been there, done that, which maybe last year was a fluke. It's possible. We've seen guys, and obviously Ovi is not the guy you can compare everyone to because he's
the exception, not the rule.
Exactly. But there are guys like that exist that can do this at age 40. There are guys that exist that can do this at age 37, age 35. And hockey is a lot on the body, especially when you play as physical as some of these guys do. They're big on the hits there. But I mean, if you just have that mindset and you get lucky with injuries, I think that's the key. The Rangers last year got brutalized by injuries a lot. So, I mean, as much as these guys are old, injury luck plays a huge part. And if they can stay healthy, if Trouba and Kreider can stay healthy, there's no reason to think that they're going to just fall off a mountain. Are they going to keep this level? God, no, they're not keeping this level. But they're not going to just fall off a cliff like they don't have any hockey skills, like the Monstars took their skill in hockey to go play against the Looney Tunes, right? This is not what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's just what worries me is the shooting percentage. They're in the top 5 in the league when it comes to shooting percentage, and teams will adjust. Now that you have film on some of these younger guys, you'll know these habits, and that's when the veteran mentality comes in later in the season, where you can maybe get into their heads, like that immaturity shows up, or the lack of commitment to playing defensive hockey instead of that run and gun style. But shout out to Troy Terry. He's on a tear to start the season. Having him with Leo and Carlson, they've developed some pretty good chemistry so far. let's see what happens going forward.
I want to stay in the Pacific here, Shane. I want to talk a little bit about the Vegas Golden Knights, a team that we both thought was going to be dominant. And we talked a little bit about, when we were talking about the Ducks, these teams that have slow starts, right? The Oilers always start slow. The Leafs always start slow. These teams that have been there, done that, know they're going to make the playoffs, or just coasting through the regular season, kind of start slow a lot. Vegas 7-4-4 through 15 games right now, 18 points. It's not the end of the world. It really isn't. They've lost 3 straight, though, and that's a little concerning. They don't have this home ice advantage like you would think Vegas does a lot of the time. They've been better on the road so far, and most concerning to me, their goal differential just isn't there. That's something that isn't an end-all, be-all, but we're like a quarter of the way through the season now, right? This is not like a nothing fraction of the season. We're a quarter way through, and if you're not able to separate yourself from these teams that you're playing, there's real concern that Vegas isn't clicking with all of their new guys that they brought in.
Yeah, there'll probably be a latter half adjustment where you need to develop chemistry. They've had a lot of moving parts over the past few years.
Right.
And so losing Pietrangelo is huge. You have to find a guy who's playing close to 30 minutes every night. You have to give those minutes to somebody. And some of these guys in their roles aren't used to that responsibility yet. So it's going to take time to develop and make a game plan around that because that's a huge loss. He's arguably a Hall of Fame defenseman, and he was just suddenly gone from your roster due to some pretty bad medical issues.
Mm.
So you have to find time to replace that. And of course, without him, your defense and your offense is going to suffer because you don't have your clean breakouts and you don't have that go-to guy to play defense. And then they also don't have a go-to goalie, which is why they added Carter Hart. God knows what he's going to be, but he has the talent to maybe save their season a little bit or at least add some more stability and consistency to that position. But I am not worried about Vegas. Again, they've been there, done that, extremely talented. They can make a move. Yeah, they'll be fine. Like they're veteran players. They'll develop chemistry and they'll be right back into being contenders.
Yeah, I'm not super worried about them, but again, at the same time, I'd like to see more out of the Vegas Golden Knights with how stacked of a roster they have. That is maybe the best roster on paper in all of hockey. But every division is wild, just about, except for the Central Division. The Central Division is normal. I mean, about as normal as things can get in what is a really wacky hockey season. Your top 3 could have been predicted. The Avs, the Stars, and the Jets currently sitting 1, 2, 3. Number 4, that's going to change. They're all separated by 1 point. So it's not like it's crazy that the Blackhawks have a 1-point lead over the Wild and the Mammoth, but the Central has been normal. So we're going to skip over that one real quick. I do want to shout out the Avalanche, though. I kind of talked about it earlier. 27 points leading the charge for the President's Trophy right now. Only one game all season where they haven't gotten a point at least. 11-1-5 so far, plus 25 goal differential, 4 straight wins. They've been a menace, and the way they're playing, I think they should be favorites to win the Stanley Cup. But I do want to move on to the East, because the East also insane. I'm going to start in the Atlantic because you want to talk about a division being flipped on its head. I could imagine this division literally being opposite, minus the Sabres at the bottom. But your bottom 3 teams for the Atlantic Division, the Sabres, the Leafs, and the Panthers. Your top 3 teams, the Canadiens, the Bruins, and the Senators. The Bruins, who you wrote off, said they could never be good again. Well, Pasternak decided, he listened to that, and he said, Shane Brisland, this is for you. 10 goals, 12 assists through the first 18 games of the season, leading the league in those categories, leading fantasy at least, not leading the league in anything. Nathan McKinnon still exists. But the Boston Bruins have been really, really good to start the season. This feels more sustainable to me than the Ducks. Maybe I'm insane for thinking that because the Bruins just always find a way to be good, but this feels a little bit more real than the Ducks down in the West.
So they have a new head coach this year. And if you've listened to some of his speeches, he's like really rallying this team. Him and Marco Sturm has done a great job because they're a bunch of, for lack of a better term, cast offs, and a lot of players who have experienced the Bruins go through some really down seasons, like Charlie McAvoy coming off injury, not his best season last year. Jeremy Swayman, who got a huge contract extension, didn't quite live up to it last season and had one of his worst seasons of his career. And then you have Pavel Zacha, kind of like a middle six guy. Middlestat was just kind of a throwaway in a trade. And then Zadorov, he's really bounced back and is having a good season so far. He just hits everything that moves and plays some intense hockey. So all of these guys are having bounce back seasons. All of these guys have a chip on their shoulder because everyone, like myself, counted them out saying they have no chance, they're gonna suck, and they're like, fuck you, we're NHLers, we're here, and we're here to punch you in the mouth. So it's typical Bruins hockey trying to prove everyone wrong and that they're still relevant. And
it's working.
Props to them. Props to Morgan Geekie. He just keeps fucking scoring. Like he's 30 goals last season, 11 to start off this season. I hate saying the word sustainable because it's going to be the theme of this show of whether or not they can keep doing this throughout his whole season. But he's shooting at 20%,
right?
Which he's not going to shoot at 20% the whole season. But God knows. But he's just been a huge pickup for them. It just shows how much talent there is in the NHL when guys like Morgan Geekie kind of came out of nowhere, given a top six spot with the Bruins who really needed somebody to fill that hole, and he has capitalized it. It reminds me of Ryan Donato for the Blackhawks. Like, always a talented player, just couldn't find that top six role where he could succeed. And, give him a spot in the Blackhawks, scores 30 goals. So it just goes to show that there's a lot of talent out in the NHL, and you can always be surprised by somebody.
Always, always. The Canadiens sitting at the top of that division, but the Boston Bruins, the hottest team in hockey right now, seven straight wins for that team up in Boston. Sustainability is going to be the big question of this episode because it is still early season. A lot of these things can be flukes. These teams could lose every single game out for the rest of the season. They also could win every single game. We have no idea what's going to happen in the future, but this is a Boston.
Not get injured.
It could. Pasta could get injured. We're not going to speak that into existence because that would suck.
Yeah, but we don't want that to happen, but it's, if anything can derail a season. Injuries.
You can never be ready for them, or you can never expect them, but you can at least be a little bit ready for them. I want to stick in this division a little bit. We kind of touched on it earlier, but the Toronto Maple Leafs are off to another slow start. They're now down potentially 2 goaltenders after Solars goes down with an injury. Their other goaltender, John Wall, dealing with personal issues away from the team right now. This is only going to push them further and further away from the top of the Atlantic. And if these teams continue to win games like the teams at the top of the Atlantic have been doing, it's going to be hard for the Leafs to climb out. They don't have Mitch Marner anymore. That's a big loss. We talked about it in our off-season or preseason prediction video. That's a big loss for them. It's not necessarily going to derail their season, but this is something that you have to keep an eye on in Toronto because this feels like, at least to me, a season that's primed for disappointment up in the Great White North.
I hate to say that I'm not worried because I feel like we go through this every year where we've done it like 3 seasons in a row with the Oilers at this point.
Right.
We're like, oh no, they're suck.
So Gotta fire your
they're
coach.
So bad. Fire everything. Get Stuart Skinner out of here. But they always find a way second half of the season where, McDavid and Matthews go off for 100 points in 50 games or something stupid like that.
Right.
Or they pull off a 16-game win streak or something ridiculous. But this Leafs team, though, has a very different vibe to it, where they're having an identity crisis now that one of their big key contributors in Mitch Marner is now gone. It's like, all right, who are they now? And it sucks not getting consistent goaltending. But I think this is good for them because they need that regular season struggle. I think for the past few seasons, they could have waltzed through the regular season and they get to playoffs, they're caught off guard with how much you have to grind to get every single win. And I think having this grind mindset, like having to make up a lot of ground and having to really work and know how to win these tough times without outscoring your opponent and actually playing good, well-rounded hockey is going to help them in the long run. Because I think when that one year when the Caps lost, they didn't make the playoffs. It really taught them, all right, we need something different here. Something's not working. And that's when they hired Barry Trotz, and that's when they developed that more defensive mindset, and that's how they eventually won their championship. So I think this is just a reality check into what you need to do to win, because clearly what we're doing now is not working and they need to find themselves.
I'm glad you brought up the Caps because that's actually exactly where I was going to go. I wasn't going to go as far back as hiring Barry Trotz, but the year that they won, 2018, that was a year I vividly remember the Capitals starting off slow. I was like, wow, the Caps are going to miss the playoffs. This is the worst Capitals hockey season I have experienced in a very long time. Lo and behold, they win the Stanley Cup that year, right? I remember distinctly feeling that this is the worst Caps team in at least the last 10 seasons. This could be good for the Leafs. You bring up that mentality of fighting, which it's a very good point. If you get that mentality, if you get in that one game at a time mentality instead of a bigger picture thing like the Leafs always are in, you have to win a cup. You haven't won a cup since what, the 60s or whatever? It's been a long time. And that's big picture. That's a lot to put on the shoulders of Austin Matthews, of these players that they're not 80 years old. These guys aren't 60 years old. These guys weren't playing in the 60s. These guys weren't playing in the 70s. Like, it's part of the legacy, but it's not their legacy. And I think it kind of gets mixed in a little bit, and that's a lot of pressure for the Cowboys of the NHL, right? That's, I think, what part of why the Cowboys are bad in the NFL or can't quite get over the hump. This is a really good point you made, Shane. I think this is something that could help them out a lot. I do want to talk a little bit about the Panthers. They're dealing with a lot of injuries. They're sitting in a very similar situation to the Leafs. A lot of their top guys are out. They're struggling. Do they have any hope of finding a way into the playoffs this year?
It's just going to be hard to tell without Barkov and Tkachuk, because you take the two best players off of any team, they are going to struggle. And how well they come back from injury, you just never know. Like, some guys are superhuman, and like Adrian Peterson, they tore his ACL, wins MVP rushes for 2,000 yards.
Right.
Or Brad Marchand, he had all these knee injuries, and then he came back months earlier than expected and helped the Bruins get to a playoff spot. So, but then there's other times where the player just doesn't look the same. With like Patrick Kane and Nick Backstrom both got the same hip resurfacing surgery. Patrick Kane puts up a 60-point season with the Detroit Red Wings. Backstrom effectively retires from the NHL.
Right.
So you just never know how well these guys are going to come back. And it's like, they won 2 cups. That's a lot of wear and tear on the body. So God forbid if they don't sustain this and they barely miss the playoffs, they just needed the rest.
They do.
So again, I've predicted them as a wild card team. And so with how close the East is, everyone's at least 2 wins away from each other. It wouldn't surprise me if they fell off just because you don't have Barkov and Tkachuk. And to go off that, you're losing your 2 leaders too. Both of those guys are captains. Not having them in the locker room hurts. And if anyone's going to get this team out of the hole, it's going to be Brad Marchand.
And he's been playing really good right now too.
Playing really well. So he has like 11 goals right now, leads the team in goals. If anyone is going to drag him into a playoff spot, it's going to be Marchand, and you just have to lean on that guy who's a veteran and a personality. Mm-hmm. So am I worried about them? I think the better word is I don't care. Like, they'll find some way to pull some shit out of their ass and make a playoff spot and make another cup run, or they're going to barely miss and they have a whole off season to be healthy, and then they're going to be Stanley Cup contenders again. Like they're going to be fine. Like boo hoo, they're not doing well. They're crying with their like 2 cup rings, wiping away the tears. It's just like, oh, I'm sorry, Florida. This is what sucking feels like. Welcome to the real world with the rest of us.
Oh, I want to talk a little bit about more teams that are successful real quick. The Pittsburgh Penguins, your team, kinda, sorta, a little bit.
Kind of.
Oh
I just
my
work for
God,
them.
you traitor! I can't.
I just
forgive
work
you.
for them.
I can't believe you. You move out to Pittsburgh and you lose all your morals. You start rooting for the Penguins. I can't believe you. The Pittsburgh Penguins are back, potentially. 21 points, third place in the Metropolitan. They have been playing really good hockey, at least to begin this season. Sidney Crosby is very good at hockey. Surprising absolutely nobody. Sidney Crosby, a first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best players in the history of the game. Very good at playing the game. He's very good at playing. The Pittsburgh Penguins are dangerous because they have that veteran leadership, right? This is not a Penguins team that I expect is going to go deep, make a cup run, but this is not a Penguins team that I think is going to fall off a cliff either. I think there's a real chance they miss the playoffs, but they're going to be sitting in that wild card-ish tier all season long, and it just kind of depends on, again, I hate to keep going back to this, how their guys stay healthy, because this is an older team in Pittsburgh. That makes it harder for the injury bug. It does. They're playing good hockey, but it's still early in the season, and I don't think this is going to last for them.
No. So if you look at the analytics, they are one of the worst teams in giving up shots against and high quality scoring chances against. They are getting phenomenal goaltending with Jari and Silvos. The Vancouver goaltender, for those of you who don't know, who had to fill in for Thatcher Demko and had a pretty good run for them. He's playing phenomenally with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and part of the reason why they're doing so well is because they are generating a lot of high quality scoring chances. They have a very young lineup. They have a lot of rookies and younger players filling in the gaps. And of course, their star players are playing like star players. Malkin looks like he's the 2015 Malkin who's putting up point per game numbers. I just don't trust that defense. I never understood the Erik Karlsson trade. And you have two very offensive defensemen and Karlsson and Chris Letang, and they're kind of rotating whoever's on the left side of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it really shows in the numbers because they just keep giving up opportunities. And like I said before, they're one of the worst teams in giving up high quality scoring chances. So if they don't get goaltending, it's going to be a gunfight till the end. So I don't think this is sustainable. And for the record, I just work for the Penguins. I wouldn't say I'm a Penguins fan.
He's a traitor.
Like,
a traitor and a liar and a thief and a man who has no morals anymore.
I get a lot of merch for them for free, so that's pretty nice. But I just have the job because I can sit at the front desk of their practice facility and I can get my school homework done. So they don't pay well.
Wow, flame out the Penguins, why don't you?
I'm not getting paid to do much. It's funny because technically I'm on the same payroll as Sidney Crosby. And I like to tell people that Sidney Crosby goes in the facility, takes a piss, and he gets paid more than I do in a year.
He's your coworker. So, that's just how it goes.
We're on the same payroll, so
you should unionize with him. See if you can get equal wages.
I think that's a different union. No, but Crosby's playing great. He could probably play until he's 45 if he wanted to.
I'm sure.
Like one of the best value contracts in the NHL, but I don't think they're going to sustain this. Defense wins championships, and they just don't have defense unless Tristan Jarry and Silvos carry them, which is a possibility. If you have a good goaltender, you have a good hockey team.
That's true. I've got a couple players I want to shout out, though, real quick. Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini, these young guys that are having really, really good seasons. We all knew that these guys had it in them, but the Sharks have been good again,
They've been fun to watch.
they've been fun. Macklin Celebrini's been amazing. Connor Bedard's been powering the Chicago Blackhawks to a wild card-ish area, kind of the same thing as the Penguins are in my opinion. But these two guys, young, talented, are they like the next faces of the league, you think? The guys that are going to be like the, not quite the same thing because they're not in the same division, but like the Ovi, Sidney Crosby, the McDavid and Austin Matthews, the two faces of the league, because it always seems to come in twos in the NHL.
It'll be hard to say, but I do like how it's two West Coast or at least Western Conference teams and not being dominated by the East. But I think it's just because they've been good for so long that they don't get the highly touted prospects that some of these weaker Western Conference teams have gotten. So I think it's a bit early to say they're Crosby and Ovechkin because that's such a huge high bar.
Yes.
But the NHL would love it if that somehow turned into the new rivalry. The issue is they're not in the same division, but I think if the Sharks and Blackhawks play against each other, that's going to be a fun game to watch because they're very similar where they both have two highly touted goalie prospects. And then you have Bedard and Celebrini, these highly talented players. It would be a fun chess match to try to bounce those out. It's just Celebrini has a bit more help, at least offensively and in terms of a prospect pool, than the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah, no, I think the Sharks do have a brighter future than the Blackhawks, but it's good to see Bedard, really take that next step up. He was good already. He was like a near point per game player last season, but he's he's like a 1.5 point per game player right now, which is incredible.
He went from being like a okay top six forward to he's making a name for himself as a superstar. And the narrative, of course, is they're trying to make the Canadian Olympic roster, in which he's making a very good case for. And I'm glad that you brought up the Chicago Blackhawks because they have been one of the hottest teams in the NHL lately. I believe they're on a 3 or 4 game win streak. And a lot of that has to do with Spencer Knight. And he was a high first round pick. I believe it was like 10 or 11 to the Florida Panthers. And then he came to Chicago through the Seth Jones trade. And he has been, in my mind, the MVP. Because I know you and I are both in the agreement the most valuable player on any hockey team is the goaltending.
All about the goalies.
If you don't have good goaltending, you're not going to win shit.
That's right.
I don't care if you have 15 Connor Bedards on the ice. If you don't have a good goalie, it does not matter. And he is single-handedly carrying the Chicago Blackhawks save percentage. It's not sustainable unless he decides to turn into regular season Hellebuck. But he has always had this talent, and he's had his own personal struggles with his mental health, which he had to go through rehab for. But I'm glad to see that he's found a new home in Chicago and that he's proving himself worthy of being an elite starting goaltender.
That's right. We love our goalies. Goalie representation, goalie supremacy is the official stance of In the Crease by your host Jeremy Lapidus and Shane Brisland. Goalie supremacy, it's the way to go. We've talked about a lot of good, Shane. We've talked about a lot of teams that are doing good, surprisingly good, or where we expected them to be, but there's two sides to every coin. For every game that somebody wins, somebody has to lose it. And there's been a couple teams that are losing a lot of those games. I want to talk about the Predators. They're bad. They're really bad. We knew they would be bad. But I thought they would
would be bad.
A little bit better than last year. But they're worse than last year, I think. I don't know how this happened. I thought, goalie supremacy and all that, Yossi Saros coming back, they might be okay. But no. That's just not the case right now with the Predators. Them and the Flames fighting for that all coveted last place spot. Throw the Sabres in there as well.
The Gavin McKenna sweepstakes.
The sweet sweepstakes for Gavin McKenna. It's gonna be a tight race. Usually you don't see teams separate from the pack this quickly as far as bad, but I mean. These teams are separating quickly this season.
Yeah, well, because speaking of bottom feeder teams, I want to just shout out the Buffalo Sabres. Their franchise is cursed because one of their best players, Rasmus Dahlin, his fiance, I believe, is going through some personal issues with like getting a debilitating disease. I'm not sure of the specifics, but he's taken time to take care of her. So that really sucks for him and the Buffalo family as a whole, losing one of their brothers like that, having them go through something that serious. And then they have a few crazy injuries. I know Jason Zucker's out. He was debilitated with some illness. And so, of course, injuries or players missing for any time for any reason is really screwing them over right now. And so, Buffalo's always cursed. What is it, going on 16, 17 years without making playoffs?
It's the longest drought in the major four American sports without making the playoffs right now.
So it looks like they're well on their way to continuing that trend. But going back to the Nashville Predators and Calgary Flames, it's just the Stamkos and Marchessault signings just make less and less sense the more the season goes on in hindsight.
Right.
Because they're both snipers. And then when you have them try to play with each other, it just doesn't necessarily mesh well because their best seasons are when they're playing with their elite playmaker counterparts. And, Stamkos, he had Kucherov in St. Louis, and Marchessault had Jack Eichel. And so when you don't have those playmakers to complement those snipers, you're just not going to generate offense, and that's one of their biggest issues. And then Ryan O'Reilly, I feel bad for the guy because he, in a recent interview, he was like crashing out saying he was playing like shit. And so it's bad when one of your leaders is just being so hard on himself. And so I think they just need to fire sale. They just need to sell everything. I think personally, I just want to see UC Saros on a Stanley Cup contender because I think the change of scenery will really help his mentality because, as you know, with goaltenders, that mentality is everything.
Oh, it's
so I think
everything.
having a fresh start would be great for him.
Yeah. No, I think that these guys that you mentioned, like they, like Ryan O'Reilly and all of the big names on the Predators, they have juice left. This is not a situation of, let's get the all-star team from 2015 together and let's try and make a run at the cup in 2025, right? This is not a case of that. I mean, it is a little bit, but like these guys still have juice left. They can still go out and be like really good for a team that needs offense. Stamkos still has a laser of a shot. I'm not worried about that. Ryan O'Reilly can still be a productive center. You have these guys that can step up and play really good hockey, but they just don't mesh together. Could it be something as simple as a line change? I doubt it. But like getting these guys in a new change of scenery in a new place is first of all going to help a team that needs some offense badly to make a cup run a lot. Maybe the Maple Leafs make a move for one of these guys. I think that would be real nice over there.
Ryan O'Reilly, congrats. You're back in Toronto.
Hey, you know what? It's sort of worked.
Why not try something that didn't work last time?
But
granted,
he's older and wiser now, so it's better.
Yeah. And then another thing, like Yossi with his heart condition, I think it really got downplayed how serious that was and how much it's affecting them. So I think he's definitely another potential Hall of Famer. But yeah, when you have a guy like that who's worried about his health, trying to be an elite defenseman, it's going to be really hard, and that kind of trickles down the lineup because he has his hands on all parts of how that team plays.
Right. Yeah, no, there's a lot of concerning stuff in Nashville right now, a lot of concerning stuff in Calgary, but I want to touch the last two things I want to touch on, and then I'll throw to you if there's anything that we missed for this team recap part. The Caps and the Wild, our teams, our guys, the ones that we like to watch the most, they are both meh this year. After being two of the best teams in the regular season last year. These two teams,
at least for the first half of the season.
At least, yeah, until injuries happen with the Wild. But Kirill Kaprizov has not been very good this season. That contract is not.
He's been pretty good.
He hasn't quite lived up to his contract, is the thing.
Well, he's never going to live up to,
He could, though. He could. He has the ability to. Like, I'm not saying that. I don't think that contract is so
He's
bad.
above point. Kirill is not the reason why the Wild suck.
Oh, I know. Clearly, he's not the reason why they suck. And Alex Ovechkin, with his lack of goal production, is not the reason why the Capitals suck. But it is a part of the problem. It's not like Ovi's been playing bad, but he's not getting his normal production. He's not getting his goal every other game like you expect from a guy like him. And some of that has to do with age, I'm sure, but he's still playing good hockey. There's just other things that are going on. Like, I guess, honestly, I don't really know what's going on with those two teams, why they're sucking, because they have a lot on paper and their star players aren't necessarily playing bad. The goaltenders aren't even that bad in each of those places. It's just not as good as it was last year.
I can tell you why the Wild suck, but let's finish up with the Caps first. Shout out Logan Thompson.
Dude, shout out Logan Thompson, for real.
If you look at his numbers, he is fucking carrying.
He's been the best goalie in the NHL this year.
You could argue he could put, right now, he's an MVP candidate for me. Because if you look at the numbers, he's the only reason why the Capitals are even sniffing a wild card and they're not in the same realm as the Buffalo and Calgary Flames of the world.
Right.
Like, he's putting up Hellebuck type numbers.
Yeah, 156.
My God, if the Canadian Olympic team sees what he's doing and he doesn't make that roster, I am storming Toronto or Ottawa myself, wherever the hell the coaches are, and just advocating for this man. Because I don't care if you had some petty beef with him 3 years ago because he had a bad attitude in Vegas. It's in the past. Like I said, if you don't have a goalie, you don't have a fucking hockey team.
Mm-hmm.
Put the best players out there. Like, get over your petty beef and add him to the Canadian roster, because he got snubbed for the Four Nations. He should have been on that team. Like, you can't tell me right now, with the way Binnington and Montembeault have been playing, that they deserve a spot over LT.
Look, minimum, and I mean bare minimum, he should be the backup goalie. Bare minimum, he should be the backup goalie. There's not two goalies from Canada better than him right now. But he's been playing really good. 156 goals against average right now for him. Best in the league. He's been elite. He's in the driver's seat for Vezina as long as the wheels don't fall off. But again, both of these teams are struggling despite this. They're both getting pretty solid goaltending. They're just not getting the offensive production that they got last year, which the Caps' offensive production last year was not sustainable anyway. It never was.
Alexei Protas was not getting 20 goals again.
Well, I think he could be a 20-goal scorer. He's not getting 30 goals again. That's not happening.
Yeah, he's not going to flirt with 30 like he did last season.
Right. It doesn't help that PLD went down with an injury. That's going to hurt them a little bit. The defensive core has taken a little bit of a step back, but I still think this is a good Caps team. It's largely the same as last year. They're just not getting the pucks to bounce the way that they were getting it to bounce last season.
And I think they are hurting for some depth because they had Sharon Govich, or what? No, it wasn't Sharon Govich. It was no, I think it was Sharon Govich, who was on his fourth line, and he's like at least a middle six players. He's in Edmonton right now, and he was a really good depth piece. And Ryan Leonard is trying to pick up the slack, but again, he's a rookie. You don't want to put too much on him. And Jacob Chichurin had a heck of a season. I don't know if he's going to put up 20 goals again, but he's also slowed down a little bit. But yeah, it's just a lot of depth scoring. Connor McMichael has slowed down a lot with his production, and he had a really good season last season. And so I think they just need to have the depth scoring pick up their pace. And the Wild have a lot of similar issues where our depth scoring just isn't getting it done. Because you have, your Kaprizovs and Matt Boldy's of the world will produce. We got Zuccarello back, which is a huge help. So at least he can play with Kirill, and then maybe you can put Matt Boldy down the lineup and add some secondary scoring. But we need Joel Eriksson Ek to produce. We need Ryan Hartman to start doing shit. Shout out Marcus Johansson, Caps legend Marcus Johansson. He's been really good, and he's, I think, per point value, the best contract in the NHL because he's only making $800K this year, and he's close to a point per game right now. But our bottom six isn't doing shit. I want to see Hartman and Foligno. I love those guys for what they've done with the Wild, but we need to let the youth give them a chance. We have all these prospects like Daniil Yurov and Liam Ogren. Like they need the opportunity to prove themselves as former first round picks. And then Brock Faber, he's just been so inconsistent lately. Sometimes he looks like the Brock Faber of that rookie season, and other times he's looks like he's having this junior year jettison. Because I've been thinking about he had a sophomore slump, and now it's the junior jettison where he's just not being as good of a defensive player as he used to be. So their power play's killing it at least. I mean, you just know every time those guys are out there, they're going to produce. But defensively and in terms of depth scoring, they just have to be better.
Yeah. Like I said, these are both teams I expect to bounce back a little bit. But I think they played over their heads last season, and we kind of saw it in the playoffs when they both took earlier exits than they were expecting to with the way that they played in the regular season. I think we went through just about every team that mattered, Shane. I think we did. We talked about a lot.
Do you want to talk about how bad St. Louis is doing?
We can talk a little bit about how bad St. Louis has been doing. They have also been bad, right? St. Louis, a team that had a lot of momentum last year. They've come out slow at the gate, 6-8-3, 15 points through 17 games right now. They are basically sitting at the same spot as the Nashville Predators, which when you're in Nashville Predators zone, that's not where you want to be. You don't want to be in the Predators zone at all. Not a good spot to be in any situation. The Blues have some talent, like they do.
Jordan Kyrou, Jordan
Binnington can still step up every once in a while. He's had a bad season.
He hasn't been doing that this season.
He's had a real bad season, which I think is one of the big reasons why they haven't been good. Because again, if you don't have a goalie, Shane, you don't have a team. You don't have a good team.
I think this season they're the quintessential example of you get shit goaltending, you get a shit team.
Because they made a big run last year. They did. They made a big run.
They're always one of those teams where they never make it easy trying to battle for that last wildcard spot. They always seem to be in it. But this year, Jordan Binnington hasn't played up to snuff. I think he even got more bad karma trying to steal Ovi's 900 goal puck. And then his backup, Hofer, hasn't been playing well. If not, he's been playing worse than Jordan Binnington. And now the Jordan Kyrou contract situation, there's been trade rumors going around with him. And it's just like, do you leave a guy like that? Do you just try to recoup assets from a guy like that? Because I think that's a guy you keep around as a core part of your roster, even if you do suck. He's on a really good contract. He's still relatively young. But is this the kind of season you just tank and try to get that highest draft pick possible, especially with a high caliber prospect out there?
Tanking's hard in hockey because of the lottery. You never know how it's going to go, right? But as long as you have Binnington, I mean, he can just stand on his head any given night, which sucks because most nights he doesn't do it. He needs to have a good benching. That's what he needs. He needs to have a good time to sit in the corner and think about how he's been playing. And
some minors to piss him off.
Yep, that's what he needs. He needs some motivation. He needs some bulletin board material, and then he'll go back to his, I'm the best goalie in the world for a month situation, which he always has the ability to do. So
he played his best hockey when no one knew who the fuck he was, and he had to prove that he was worthy of an NHL caliber job. And I think he needs to be reminded that you can quickly become irrelevant in this league.
Yeah, it's very, very easy. But there's still like 4 months to go in
Yeah.
the NHL season. We are a quarter of the way through the season, but there's a lot for us to learn. There was some big news earlier this week, Shane. The Hockey Hall of Fame class of 2025 was officially announced. A couple legends from when we were growing up, right? Zdeno Chara got in,
Scott's
Duncan
legend.
Keith, Joe Thornton, Jumbo Joe got in. All of these guys, there were a whole bunch of huge parts of watching hockey growing up. These big defensemen that were huge in the 2000s, 2010s. A couple women's hockey players got in as well. Jennifer Boderil, Brianna Decker, and Danielle. Oh my God, I'm gonna butcher
Sauvignon.
that. Thank you. Sauvignon got in, as well as Jack Parker and Alexander McGinley.
McGillney.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
I should have practiced saying these names beforehand. I did not do that. If you
Yeah.
can't tell, but no, a lot of. I honestly don't know too much about how the Hockey Hall of Fame works, Shane. If it's a certain amount of players a certain amount of people that get inducted, or if it's more like baseball where you could have 0 people get in one year. I assume it's a certain amount of people get in, but there is, as far as I know, all of these guys very much worthy of making the Hockey Hall of Fame. They have been really excellent on and off the ice for the sport of hockey as a whole.
Yeah. So McGillney is a fascinating one because he last played in 2005, 2006, and everyone was saying, oh, he should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And because he's not only put up the numbers to deserve being in the Hockey Hall of Fame, he not only has the hardware with a Stanley Cup with the New Jersey Devils, putting up, multiple 40-goal seasons, having a 100-point season. He was one of the first Russian players to defect to the United States. So he effectively changed the course of hockey history, and he started the trickle of all of these very talented Russian players. So who knows, if he didn't defect earlier, we may not have, the Ovechkins, the Kaprizovs, and the Kucherovs, all of these Russian superstars like we do today. So he was very influential in that aspect. And so it's good to finally see him brought in. Who knows why he was left off for so long. And just to answer your question, I believe they have to let in a certain amount of people every year. It's usually about 4 from the players' side of things. And it's selected by a committee of peers. So you have former NHL general managers, former players, some legends of the game. And this was a very good year. There's not a lot of players where you're like, no, that guy's a weird choice. Everyone, you look at them and you're like, yeah, that guy was going to be in. So shout out to Zdeno Chara, one of the biggest, most intimidating defensemen the league has ever seen, tallest player ever. He's like the perfect human being because he knows like 5 different languages. He's still running like marathons and ultra marathons. He's well into his 40s. And he's got a whole bunch of business ventures going on. Duncan Keith, I personally despise the man as a Chicago Blackhawk. Every time he won a cup, it was against my team, the Minnesota Wild. But he is a phenomenal defenseman. There was a reason why he won a Stanley Cup, multiple Stanley Cups, and a playoff MVP and 2 Norrises. He was one of the best all-around defensemen in the 2010s. And then who was Joe Thornton. How could I forget
Jumbo
him?
Joe.
Just a legendary interview guy. My favorite clip from him was they were asking him, how does he feel about Patrick Marleau's like 4-goal period? And he was just like, if I scored 4 goals in a game, I'd whip my dick out. So he's full of all of these stories. A great locker room guy. It's a shame he never won a cup. I think he's also a random trivia answer. I think he's the only 4 major North American sports to win an MVP and get traded in the same season.
That's impressive. That's very impressive.
Fun fact for your sports trivia night. Yeah, MVP while being traded mid-season. So, phenomenal playmaker for the Sharks, one of the best playmakers to ever do it, over 1,000 assists in his career, and one of the all-time personalities.
For sure. Lots to like about this Hall of Fame class. Lots to like about this NHL season. We are 1 month in. We'll do our awards about the halfway point, I think, because we can't really tell what's going on with awards right now. We'll do another show 1 month from now. We'll do a month check-in every single month. We'll do a little check-in. We'll be halfway through next time we do a show, Shane. So make sure you keep an eye out for more in the Crease. We have been your hosts, Jeremy Lapidus and Shane Brisland. Like I said, we'll be back next month. You can check us out everywhere you get your podcasts, all over the internet. That's Apple Podcast, that's Spotify, that's Amazon Podcast, and even more. You can find us all over the internet as well. TikTok at Triple Threat Show. You can find us on Twitch at 3 Threat Show, YouTube at Triple Threat Show, and Instagram at 3 Threat Show _. Check us out. We will be back with more Triple Threat Show on Friday with me, Mehrob, and Nolan.